Hey everybody, it's Olivia with Freedom at the Mat. Thank you so much for stopping by the mat today. I hope this message finds you wonderful and blessed wherever you're situated throughout the world. So as you know by now, I really do enjoy bringing on guests who are experts in areas that I am not, who have more experience than I could ever have in my personal lived experience. And today is no exception. We have, hailing from the West Coast, right? From LA in the house, we have Macala Lacy. Kayla is the founder of the Well Healing, which is an inclusive resource dedicated to the health and healing of underserved communities. And that just speaks to my soul in so many ways. Kayla is also a trained EMDR, which stands for Eye Movement Desensitization and Processing. She's a yoga psychotherapist, and she is an associate marriage and family therapist. She has a wealth of information to offer, and today we're going to talk about triggers. If anybody, whether it's a holiday season when you're watching this or beyond, if you find that you always get re-triggered and re-traumatized, we're going to really break down what triggers are and find our way out of that particular cycle. So if you'll help me right now, I'm going to welcome into our chamber Kayla Lacy. Kayla, how are you today?
Hello, I'm doing very good. Happy to talk with you. Thank you so much.
I am so happy to have you and so grateful that our paths have crossed. I want to go ahead and get into it. Let's talk about triggers, right? Now, at the time of our recording, this is right before the holiday season, and this is a piece of content we're going to live forever. But I would like for you to define what are triggers.
Yes. So when we're talking about a trigger, what we're actually talking about is an experience that is bringing up for us, often unconsciously, a really big emotional response that is connected to an original trauma or traumas. So when we say a trigger, we're actually talking about the ways that a trauma memory is being triggered in our bodies based off of an experience that we're in that present moment.
And so, what's the origin of a trigger? It sounds like, if I listen to you, which I am, there's some trauma that occurred in our lives. And if it's not healed, it becomes a wound, and that's a trigger. Like, I want you to break down the origin of a trigger.
Absolutely. So life be life in, and sometimes certain things hit us in ways that leave really lasting impact. And if those experiences especially aren't something that we fully process, like getting a level of understanding, awareness from, it can become something that is stored in our bodies. And so when we interact with something that reminds us, again, either like consciously or even unconsciously, we might not recognize that it's something that is unresolved in our bodies. We will respond oftentimes with how we may have even responded in that original sort of moment when we were hurt. And so that's being recreated and sort of replayed in the present moment, even though what we are actually sort of feeling is the original or all the other times where we have been made to feel a similar sort of feeling as what we are going through in that moment.
So, Kayla, help us understand, how do we know when we're being triggered? Is it an emotional response? Like, typically, and this is what you do. So how would we know we're being triggered so that we can avoid being triggered?
Yes. So one of the really obvious ways that we can get a sense that we're being triggered is if our emotional or physical, whatever, the response doesn't quite match the moment that we find ourselves in. So this could look like someone in traffic cuts me off and I just explode, and my whole rest of my day, rest of my week is ruined. I'm stuck mad at this person. This is the way that I am feeling emotionally. I'm angry. I feel disrespected, disregarded, physically, my blood pressure is up. I have headaches because I'm just so amped up about this 15-second interaction with this person who cut me off on the road, right? So that big response doesn't actually match the moment that I'm in. Often, if we dig a little deeper, what we find is that I'm not actually upset at the person who cut me off in traffic, but it is recalling in my body and in my mind different moments where I have felt ignored or disrespected. And so it is actually really to our benefit to understand those feelings when they come up, because they help us understand what is this sort of tender or pain point that is being brought up in this moment. And so again, this looks like the way that we express ourselves emotionally, but it's also something that is physically happening in our bodies, the mental space that our minds go to as well. So it's a real holistic sort of experience in any of the ways that our trauma responses can come up when we're triggered.
I may add to that from some personal things I have been dealing with. I think one recommendation I have for people is to deal with what happened to you with the person who did it to the extent that you can. Now, we both know that sometimes things happen to us, molestation and other things that are unfortunate, where you can't deal with the person in that real time, or the person's just delusional and they're like not acknowledging it. But to the extent that you can deal with that person, because if not, you're likely going to carry over those feelings and thoughts to another situation. To your point, you're like wilding out because somebody cut you off in traffic, you pulling a gun out, you're carrying this rage, this anger with you. And then you're responding to inappropriate situations that have nothing to do with the actual injury.
Right, right. Absolutely.
So
And I think that what you said is important, to really take the time and understand the things that we have survived. And so for some of us, the ways that survival looks is getting really upset and explosive. So there are different kinds of ways that we can think about trauma responses. Many of us have heard of fight, flight, freeze. Fawning is also a newer idea of how we can sort of automatically respond in those moments where we're put into survival mode, and just trying to stay safe. In those moments, there's so much happening. And so it's really important to have space and time to really unpack what it is that we went through and understand our responses to it. And that just allows us to then move with more intention in the present moment, so that when we're at the holiday table and so family member makes that comment, I can actually choose how I want to respond versus just reacting because of some stored stuff in my body that hasn't had a chance to really be relieved yet.
I couldn't have said it more beautifully. That leads very, very easily and lovely into our next question.
Yeah.
Kayla, can you provide some advice for us? How can we protect ourselves from triggers, re-traumatizing ourselves over and over again?
Yeah. So it is useful to think about maybe a before, during, after, if you're someone who likes some structure and a plan. So beforehand, considering, what are my sensitivities right now? What do I know is especially tender? And so what are the needs that are going to be important to be met, given what it is that is present for me right now? I think a lot about grief, for example, and how that comes up frequently with the holidays, right? And so if that's something that I know ahead of time is a tender spot, what kind of extra care do I need so that that can feel managed enough during this time? Considering as well, what are the practices, the people, the places that offer me a sense of comfort or empowerment or feeling safe enough. Let me get as much of that in as I can, because that helps give us a level of sort of resilience when we're dealing with something, if we already feel comfort and connected. While we are in the experiences that may touch on vulnerable places or trigger us, that's the time that we are using our coping strategies, right? So again, thinking what is helpful for me when I am in these places? What's been helpful for me before? Maybe last year I found it really useful when I felt myself getting activated to take a break, take a walk, or maybe I have my friend who's already expecting a call from me so I can get this stuff off of my chest, or I need to go and listen to a funny podcast. I don't know. You decide, and you know really what is best for you, right? So giving ourselves that preparation beforehand, and also the grace to know that it's okay if I am triggered, that I might feel a little sensitive, and that doesn't mean anything's wrong with me or I need to shame or blame myself. And then, of course, afterwards, like we said, doing that reflection, if something does come up, well, what happened, and what do I have from this that I can learn to support me in moving forward?
Thank you. Thank you, because I need that going into the holidays, right? Where people that you want to avoid, but you just can't. You're going to have to confront them. And I think, to your point, are there ways where you can self-soothe, prep
Yes.
yourself? I remember years ago when I had a certain area of my life that was unhealed, I would have a prep therapy conversation and then a post. So before I would leave New York to go to Memphis, I would have a therapy session. And then as soon as I got back, I would have another one. And so I think it's important for us to do whatever we have to do. I also think about if you have to, what you mentioned about having a friend that's on call, on standby. I've had that. And I've had I had wounds in Memphis, right? Where you grow up, a lot of us have wounds and we leave, right? And we have to return.
Yeah.
So if you know that you're going home, and this is for anybody who's going home for the holidays in particular, and if it's not the holiday season and you just happen to go be around family, could be for a funeral, could be for a wedding, could be anytime you're gonna be around somebody who you just really don't want to have to be around, but you have to, we invite you also to have somebody on standby for you. If you're not there yet where you're able to be that resource for yourself, where you can go in the corner, pray, meditate, whatever you do. Now, of course, me and Kayla don't want you to like smoke and drink to get through it. Like, we're trying to find healthy ways to avoid these triggers. We are feeling the effect of our triggers. But if you just don't have that ability just yet to self-soothe, then maybe you find a friend that's available or a therapist. And our last question for you, sister, is, can we ever fully rid ourselves completely of triggers?
That is a really interesting question. And you know what? I think that healing is very nonlinear and it ebbs and it flows. So I think that we can definitely develop a lot of awareness of ourselves, of our tender spots, and figure out really useful ways to manage and deal with those feelings. And also, life is life. And so the things that maybe at one point were really hard and now feel easy might be replaced with another challenge that we've encountered during our journey of life. And so I think that managing our big feelings, because that's really all a trigger is an opportunity to manage and learn from some big feelings, is a part of the human experience. And so there are moments where that feels easier and moments it feels harder. But whether we come to a place of being, completely healed or never having these triggers ever again, I'm not so sure, because life throws a lot at us. And so I think we can just become really good at being present with ourselves and meeting our needs in the moment as they come.
Thank you so much, Kayla. For those who want to follow you and they may want to contact you, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yes, please. Everything you need to know can be found at thewellhealing.com. If you want to follow us on Instagram at The Well Healing. In the past, we had a whole community conversation on triggers. So you'll want to go check that out so you can find out even more details on how to navigate those situations. And from there, you'll be able to find me. So I hope to speak with y'all soon.
Thank you so much. And I neglected to mention at the very top that you're also a 200-hour RYT. So this sister is legit. She is real. She's done the work. She is not only a marriage and family therapist, she's a yogi, and she's also an EMDR. So she is somebody that you can trust. That's what we try to do, is bring people here on Freedom at the Mat that you can trust, no matter if you're in LA, if you're in New York, if you're in Jamaica, you're in Accra. We want to be that resource for you. So hang out for a second. So everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. Triggers, it's important for us to pause to talk about it because many of us are walking around the world with a lot of wounds. And when you don't take the time to heal yourself or become healed, you are subject for re-injury. And we all know what that's like. Let's say, you pull a hamstring and you pull it again. You're never really operating from a whole perspective. So here at Freedom at the Mat, we really want to make sure that we're providing resources to help you live a whole, healthy, and free life. And we hope that the information shared from Macala Lacy today, Kayla, has been valuable to you for your journey. May God be with you. See you again soon. Namaste.